Hello, hi, this is Skorsen, and welcome back to another episode of SK Learns. I took the original, this is the non-Blu-ray version. It's a screenshot from that. So this is why it looks different compared to the Blu-ray. But what I did was get a color corrector and then made it look like this. That was trying to reference the Blu-ray. So I tried to Blu-ray-ify it, I guess. I've done this with other projects that I will get into in another clip, but overall, this is what I did. The way that I did this was mostly started with the color corrector focusing on the gradient map. The gradient map is the one thing that does the most significant difference because it changes the intensity of a lot of the colors like this. This is the darkest hues, but overall, the main thing that I just wanted to do was see on how adding a background that's, in this case, a gradient that does a radial shape, and that's just controlled like that. I wanted to see on how that would overlay and compare to the original that's more flat. This adds some sort of kind of look to it that I thought was interesting. The main thing is I thought I wanted to make it a little bit more kind of aggressive with the grain compared to the other one, compared to the original, because I think the gradient adds a little bit more dimension, and then we have the gradient map that kind of boosts the colors a bit, but then adding a filter, which you can't see with YouTube's compression, but if I zoom in, there's a way more intense grain for this. Now, I have the power low, but raising the power a little bit more higher, you can see. This grain is actually used during the filter, and this is in the free version. All the stuff and effects that I've done have been in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. So yeah, you can do this, and you can change the blend a bit, and I changed the seed. You can have it animate. I don't do that. Especially with images that I'm not thinking on actually using within a video. What I did was export it. I exported it out using an option that you can do with any image, and this is actually how I have done many other things, and I'll get into that. Opening this up, we can actually kind of see on how it looks like. This is the final image. And how did I get this onto my computer? Well, what I did was just do this. When you right click, you go into save image, and then you can click that, and it gives you the option and then all that stuff. And you can click all files, but it automatically, whatever the bottom file name is what it will go out to, but you can choose PNG files and or JPEG files. For this one, because it's different, I will choose a JPEG. Now, I can just rename this something more fitting and then save it. The same image occurs. So I just duplicated the same thing. But overall, that is something that I did. Now, how would this be useful? Well, if I'm going into the example of many of my own projects, the things that I have done, if I want to go back to the Copland recreation that I made, when I originally started that, I actually had, I'm going into the files right now. In that, I have made images where I had the actual like image. So one without that, one with the shading where the text would normally be, and then also a contrasted one. So there's now, I could technically turn this into an icon, and there you go. And then one with the text. And some of these are actually upscaled. But then I went into Krita, the art program that I use for my artwork. I then did this. So this is done and edited in Krita by just blurring it out and then adding some vignetting using a gradient. It's very simple. You could do this in DaVinci Resolve if you really wanted to. But then I just put it to the side, basically making just wallpapers if I really wanted to use them. So that's fun. And that's from Steins Gate. But anyway, overall, Doing this right-click and exporting can be very useful in case you have an image that's really hard to render. You just render it out, and then you can put it back into the composition and make things way more smooth. Now on to the secondary thing. Where did I get this gradient map? Where did I get this node? Well, the thing is it's pretty much on a website. If I remember correctly, it was just on an article. Some guy was talking about it, about Fusion. He did tons of effects, and then he had a download link, or more accurately, he had a plain text document that was linked on the website that you just copy and pasted into Notepad, and there you go. That's what I did. There are some YouTube videos that actually explain a better way to do this, but the thing that's not explained is what are versions. Versions is just this little button, and that's how I did this. That's how there are different numbers, so you can do heat map effects. So like if I wanted to do this and make it blue, I could. So I could do a really crazy heat map kind of effect. I'm gonna go change that. But all I have to do is just press that, and there we go. Oh, that is grainy. Whoa, that's noisy. That's what that is. But yeah, the filter tool is very useful. But there are YouTube videos where if you just search up Fusion DaVinci Resolve gradient map, you'll get probably way more better videos that explain how to do it within Fusion. And there's so many videos where I could do a video like that, but then it'd just be me effectively reiterating already known knowledge, which technically is the whole copy and paste thing, but whatever. This kind of relates to some of the stuff that I had to do. So there are a lot of useful applications that can go into using a lot of these gradient maps and all that stuff, because if you don't want to really get into this thing, which I don't know how to get into, the color tab is a little bit daunting. So this is kind of a good alternative, especially if you just want to do something simple and dual tone, and that's it. Now, I want to go on to a different aspect. This was not what I was planning on covering, but here we go. How I did my thumbnail. So when I did Copland explanations, here's the video. Here's what it looks like. Here's the audio and all that stuff. Here's my voice audio. And here's the base video. But, oh, that would probably be too loud. But you get the point. So this is the entirety of the video in which I have the little like corrections. I cropped some of the footage, and I'll be doing this exact thing to this video. How weird is that? But overall, going into this, there are some things that I want to show. And if I open this in the Fusion page, this is what the node graph for my image looks like. I took the original photo version of my image that I made and then edited that. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that this is actually a higher resolution. This is 1920. Hard to read anyway. But overall, this is the wallpaper version edit that I did in Krita that I added into here. Then I put it in a DVE node, and basically that is making it 3D and puts it into 3D environment. The second thing that's added onto that is mostly just a background and all that stuff, and that's just something that I had in there. Gradient, that basically make it a little bit more popping for the text, which is literally just, is pretty much just shading styles. That's all it is. And if we do that, then that's a glow that I did in the shading style, and that's all. Now, this is what the original looks like, and then I just did a massive glow to it, which it's okay. This could actually have probably worked, but I wanted it to look all crazy, and then what I did was resize it to the right aspect, which is with the resize node. And then all this stuff here is just random garbage. In any case, I did the same thing. I clicked here, and now I exported that out as a JPEG because it file compression and all that stuff, and it won't load if it's at a larger file size. But that's what I did with this. Now, I'm going into the third thing. When I was creating this project, this was for an entirely different project than just Copland Overview, but that kind of ended up being the same project, so I just... tons of different things. But overall, we have the Copland explanations, and then we have something like this. I may export this ending out, but as you can see, this is the SEL, Serial Experiments Lane PS1 game, PlayStation game. And what I did was edit the footage, use the how I made the video player tracker thing, and this is the first time where I've actually tried to use it. I put a little bit of blur on it, and I added some texture, the same type of texture that I used for the Blood Series episodes, to add more kind of grain to it, and all that stuff, and then had that play out. I'm not doing the sound because it's actually pretty loud, and I don't want to mess with it, but overall, this just adds a lot of kind of depth, and I did this with the same gradient map. So if we go into here, then we can see this is all it is. And this actually has like multiple different versions that I was kind of messing with. Some more intense, lesser intense, and then the base variant. But yeah, this is just a more contrasty version compared to the original image, where if I actually boost this up and make it more focused, you can see the difference in these two. They're really contrasting. The one thing that's interesting with this on how it affects some of the color, to me, it brightens everything up to an extent where it's no longer faded, which I thought would work with the scene because I was already cropping it to be 16:9 aspect ratio. So this is another application, almost the exact same application that I did, except for with a video. You can do a lot. Now, I had this actually fade out over the course of time, but yeah, it's really cool. Now, I also did some other stuff with something that you'll notice that's very similar, that you've actually already seen before, and you have seen it at the beginning of this video, the Navi overview, except there is there's a little bit of one movement. I really can't play it because it's very, very loud. Actually, you know, I can just mute the audio. There we go. But this is what it looks like. There we go. That's super better. But overall, this is what the full thing looks like, and then it fades in and all that stuff, and then we have it play. And that's kind of the thing. So if we zoom that in a little bit more and view it, this has a little bit of texture to it. Sorry if it's too hard to see with the compression. And then we have the tracker that's actually tracking the entire thing, but I have it fade out over the course of time. Then we have lane spin, and then it ends. And now there's an ending sound and all that stuff that's edited in to make it sound all cool, but I don't want to mess with that because the last time that I did this, it was too loud. The way that I messed with this, where I made it, is that actually you can use the DVE node in the editor. Like the DVE is actually in here, and you can just find it. Just use the search here. But overall, I had the DVE, that's actually above it. But this is what the actual full thing looks like with the texture to it, where I did scan lines. Now, this is something where when I last time went over this, it's a little bit daunting because that's what this effect does. It makes this base thing look like this, kind of like a CRT, and then with the DVE, it just really kind of boosts the CRT look. Or just some screen that's kind of dramatic. But yeah, it really does add this kind of crazy texture to it that makes it interesting to me. And I liked how I did some affecting with that. But this is really, in Fusion would have been better. When I first did this, what I did with the DVE is actually go into Fusion and edit the adjustments clip that had it already added onto it. And all I did was just smooth it out in the spline graph. There's two scan lines that go separate directions. One, they're not 100% horizontal and vertical. One's tilted at an angle, and then the other one's horizontal. So you can see now here that one's on the side, and then the other one is horizontal. So, and that one's green and kind of bluish, and that one focuses on red, and kind of similarly, but they all add together. Then I have a little bit of a dent that moves the image and kind of blurs it out a bit. and makes it, well, dent, because in DaVinci Resolve, the free version, you do not have the like displacement filter. You don't actually have that. So like, yeah, lens distortion is what it's called, and that's used a lot in the analog damage, which is also DaVinci Resolve Studio only. That is kind of using dent is kind of the secondary choice when it comes to that. So that's what I used. Then I used a little bit of embossing. That really, you can't notice the difference. It's very subtle. And then a glow that I have. And then I had a choice of radial blur, but I didn't want to do that one. And then prison blur. That's what I ended up using. And that is the thing that really does do this kind of color shift for it that I thought was intriguing. And then I have a vignette, which just only vignettes on one side, so this fades off a little bit quicker. And I have that. But yeah, that's kind of how that was structured, and that's how I did that kind of effect. So yeah, you could really end up using that, and it kind of modifies everything. And this was just done pretty much. I may do that in another video. I'm going to save that for another video because I've already talked about like 3 things. So yeah, but I think it's self-explanatory. Fusion. I used Fusion, but I'll go into that probably in another video. But yeah, so that's some ways on how to use a gradient map, I guess, and the application of it. So overall, I will not be linking to the website, the article, because it really is just a simple search. Fusion gradient map, DaVinci Resolve Fusion gradient map. That's really all you need to do if you really want it. And even then, if you want to make it, the more optimal option is to probably watch a YouTuber that already goes over it, that knows it way more better than I do. So in any case, just Google search it. You'll find it. It's pretty simple. And overall, I hope that at least my showcase of how I have or applied it was at some degree helpful. And also note, if you do want to see exactly on how I did the Serial Experiments Lane player, that is the second video that I did in the playlist of SK Learns. So you can find it right there. And also, if you want to know on how I did the Copland OS screen, alongside with all of these kind of wallpapers, you'll find them in this video, alongside on how I did it in the Copland explanation video. So in any case, this has been Skorsen. I hope you have a good day, and always remember to keep creating. Goodbye.